Hey, welcome back to No Gears, No Glory. This is my wonderful backdrop, my toolbox that I'm very proud of, and it's very dusty. But we're not here to talk about that today. We're going to talk about this. This is my front end air splitter, chin spoiler, whatever you want to call it. But it goes on the front end of my GTI. And we took it off a while back because, well, it fell off. I had an oil change done and they put it on very poorly. And about an hour after driving it, we pulled in, tapped the curb, and it just made the whole thing fall down. We took it off the car and it's got some imperfections. But what we're going to do today is we are going to refinish this. One, to make it look better, and two, to test out how to make it look right, because we're going to actually do it again on another part of my car. Let me show you. This is our rear air splitter down here, and the car had this when I purchased it, and it's a little rough. It's got some imperfections. It's got some fading from the sun. You can see right here, through here, a little bit of damage here, which I could probably re-resin and fix. I'm not sure I'll do that as part of this process, but just want to basically refinish this so it looks good again. And we have to take it off anyways because we're going to be repainting the bumper because of this. Clear coat's totally coming up, it's bubbling, it's completely come off here. And so as part of our next couple projects on this car, we're going to be refinishing that bumper and that rear valance. So refinishing that front splitter is what we're doing today on No Gears, No Glory. Stay tuned. So initially I wasn't going to do more than just sand down the fin and then re-clear coat it, but then I got to thinking about it. There's a lot of chips in it, the road debris has beat it up a lot, so I thought this would be a good opportunity for me to play with some resin recoating, and that way I could see how good I can make it or how good I can mess it up. So if I mess it up, that's okay, you guys just get to watch it live, right? So let's get to the unboxing of that resin so that you guys can see what I got. So in this particular kit, I ordered it from West Systems. It's a 207 SA bundle. It has a couple of pumps to disperse the right amount of hardener and resin. And so these pumps come in the kit. I bought the small kit that comes with the actual resin. And then it's 32 ounces of resin. And then it also has a small can of hardener, which is 10.8 ounces. And, it had a lot of good reviews as a good product to get for this sort of thing. And this is my first time using resin and recoating carbon fiber. I know nothing about this. This is brand new to me. This is not a how-to, this is more a how I'm gonna, and so we'll see how it goes.
So right here I'm starting with a 600 grit, mostly just because there's a few scratches that are deep enough that I want to get in. So 600 grit to start, and then we'll see what that brings.
So right now you can see we have a nice haze building. The finish is actually really smooth, so I'm very happy how that's coming out. This lip, now it's hard to tell, but it actually has a lip here, goes flat, and then it goes a little bit higher. So you have two different ridges we have to go over, so that'll be interesting to get clean. You want to be cautious that you don't burn through the resin or the into the actual fibers. So edges you want to be really cautious with and careful with, so we're not going to get too aggressive on those. This job I'm going for good, I'm not going for perfect per se. This is a front air splitter, so it's going to see a lot of action. You can see that there's a lot of imperfections here, and that's just from using it and driving a car with it. So alright, we're going to keep going. so we've done the top and now we're going to work on the bottom. Not too worried about the perfection of this because it's the bottom, you won't see it, and it's going to get scratched probably the first day you drive it. So we're just going to clean it up and get it ready.
I believe this resin is a 5-to-1, so it's 5 parts resin, 1 part hardener, and that's what the pumps are supposed to do. They're supposed to allow you to have 1 pump of each, and that'll give the proper ratio. So that hopefully will turn out properly. Now, looking at the instructions, basically we're supposed to adjust this for the proper room temperature. It's roughly around 70 degrees in here, and that should give us a curing time of probably 10 to 15 hours total. So I'll be able to cure this, apply it today, and then cure it for the next day. I'll work on it tomorrow. Hopefully it'll be sandable by then. We'll test a patch and see how it goes. Hopefully it won't need to be sanded, but we'll see. We're gonna take this step by step.
So basically the instructions state that you're going to pump a few times, prime the pump, get the air out of it, and then once you've got the air out of it, it's ready to do a full dose pump. So we'll just dispose of that. It's maybe grand total between the two products, 1 full ounce, so it's not a lot of waste. So up to this point, we've actually used the 2 pumps of each that we put in the cup originally. I think 1 more pump will do it. That'll give us a little bit extra. You'll notice I'm trying to do a little bit of a high build on the edge where all the chip marks are. I don't know if I'll be able to fill those in the way I really want to, at least on this pass, but we're gonna give it a good try. On this piece right here, you may be able to see there actually was a really bad scratch right here that I'm trying to fill in. Much better than I was expecting them to. There's still little remnants of it right here at the base. I'm actually really happy with how that turned out. I think this looks pretty good overall. Nice glossy shine. It's not laying down quite as flat, but it is supposed to self-level. And you know, we may do some finishing of it at the end. We'll maybe give it a good wet sand, smooth it out, and then still clear coat it. But as of right now, I'm very happy with that. Very happy with that. Hoorah! Well, after some careful consideration, I'm going to go ahead and do another layer of epoxy resin over this. I really want to fill in all the little dips and gaps and chips that were formed in the front lip and on the sides where there's a few scratches, to fill it in as best as possible so that we can sand it down smooth and make sure that those holes are fully filled in so that we can have as best service as possible. That's the ideal, so we're going for it again. Here we go. Now right away I can tell it's a lot harder to see where I've put on the new epoxy because of the shine. So it's going to take a little bit more time to make sure I've got this coated well and to do it right. Definitely feel like having the proper brush would make a huge difference. I think the epoxy is actually breaking down the foam in this brush. I also waited, it's been about 3 hours since I applied my first coat. I feel like maybe I should have waited a little bit longer to apply the second coat. Hopefully that won't matter in the end if I'm going to just sand it down and work on the finish that way. Hopefully that won't make a difference. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to use an electric orbital sander to work on the bottom of this. There's some really uneven surfaces that I got to work through. I'm starting with a 220 grit sandpaper. Yes, that's really aggressive, but I got to work through some of these really thick areas that were really clumped up. I'm not going to be pressing hard at all. I'm going to be letting the sander do the work. And this will kind of see if we can use it on the top surface where I have even more uneven surfaces that we're going to have to work through. Okay, so here we go. As you can see here, I just did a little bit of sanding so you can get an idea of what we're talking about. These are all low spots. All the clear that you can see, these are all just low spots where you know, I've got like a real big buildup everywhere else but here. So I want to kind of get this as even as possible, and we've got this even worse on the top side, and this is where we're going really aggressive with the 220. We just want to kind of even it out. Then we'll go to probably a real quick 400, and then we'll probably do a wet 600 after that, maybe an 800. We'll see. But I just want to give you a quick view of what we're talking about. I won't punish you guys, making you watch it all. So here's a little time lapse. Please enjoy. Here we are with our 220 grit pretty much complete. You can still see there's a lot of kind of low spots, and I'm not worried too much about making the bottom half, you know, perfect, because one, it's going to be on the bottom of the car. Once it goes on a car again, it, you know, the scrapes and scratches will happen. Road debris is going to get it. So this part, not worried about being too perfect. So I want to start finishing the edges of this because they're a little rough too, so we want to smooth those out. I want everything to be relatively smooth to the touch, right? About feel. How it'll catch light will be a little bit different if there's real highs and lows, but if it's smooth to the touch, it should be pretty smooth to finish as well. But when you're working on a rounded edge, especially with this is meant to have a kind of a soft edge to it, not hard edges. You want to be careful because they are beveled on this particular piece, so we need to sand with a bevel as well. And you don't want to spend a lot of time on one spot because even though I put additional resin on this, so you can still burn through to the original layer of fiber. Okay, so we'll just do that real quick and move on from there. Alright, after wiping it down, you can see it's starting to evaporate away. We have a really nice haze. It's actually pretty smooth at this point. Some of this you can see it's still wet, so it has that kind of transparent gloss look, but it's still hazy even in that gloss phase. That's because we use such a rough grit sandpaper. And as we move to the finer grits, when we wet it, it'll lose that haziness. And then, of course, once we do our wet sand and final sand and then spray paint it, it'll look amazing. At least that's the goal, right? Okay. Next, we're going to move on to a 400 grit and smooth that out a little bit more. Now that we've got the 220 sand completed, we've got a relatively smooth surface. You can still see there's a few low spots. You know, no big deal. We're going to be sanding more into that. What I'm going to do for the purposes of your guys, you can see that I've sectioned off here with some tape. I'm going to sand with 400 and then probably a 600 wet. And I want you guys to see the progress that we're going to make, just to have a good visual of what that change is going to be. Alright, here is what it looks like after 400. Not amazing or anything at all. You can see the fiber is starting to come through a little bit more clearly than, say, the 600. So next we will go ahead and do our 600. And we're going to do a 600 wet and see how that looks. Maybe we'll have to do a 600 dry, then a 800 wet. We'll play with it a little bit. Here we go. So here we have our 220 grit, and now we've gone 400 and then 600 wet. It's just a little smoother. Doesn't look dramatically different. The dramatic difference is when you wet it. I'm gonna go an 800 sand now, and then I'll show you what it looks like wet, because that'll be what it looks like when we clear coat it. So here's how we look after an 800 grit. Now this is wet, which means this will be what it looks like when we put the clear coat on. I think that looks pretty good. It is super smooth, feels terrific. Super huge improvement, super huge improvement. Now, just gotta finish the rest. Ugh. All right, here we go. Now, interestingly, take the tape away, and you can see the difference. You can definitely feel a difference here and here, you know, where it changes. Just so much better. And we'll do a quick wet spray and see if we can see much of a difference. Yeah, I would say this reflects light so much better in that spot. I like it. All right, here we go. So in this section, we're doing our dry 600 grit. And you'll notice that as I sand, I'm kind of going at an angle. I'm trying to crosshatch this, and I'm using these predetermined sections to know how far I've gotten. So I'm using the whole mounting holes as my guidance for where I am and where I'm going. There we go. That's the whole thing sanded up to 800 grit wet sand. Let's wipe this off, get as clean as possible, and see what we've got. Alright, so here we have it. This is a finished-ish product with 800 grit wet sand. I'm a little disappointed because there's some like little pitting or something in here where there's all these little white spots, and I sanded and sanded a lot and they never came out, so I don't know if they're air bubbles or what the situation is. But you know, like I said, this was never meant to be perfect, although I started getting more towards the end, as perfect as I could get it, and I'm a little disappointed about that. But otherwise, I think it looks really good. Now this is still a little wet from cleaning it off, and you can see it creates a really nice clear fiber look. So you know, I think it's going to come out really good with the clear coat. And that's next. So we got to figure out how we're going to set this up so I can clear coat it. Alright, so I want to clear coat this, and I do not have a great way to suspend this or set it up so that I can spray it properly. I'm going to be using a 2K clear. This 2K clear is one of those that you basically pop the canister down here, and then you shake it up and it mixes and catalyzes. This is something you definitely want to wear a respirator for. It's super caustic or carcinogenic, or you know, one of those C words that are really bad for us. So I'm going to be wearing a respirator. My plan is to spray the top surface and the edges first. We'll do a couple coats of that, and once it's dry, probably in a day or so, I will flip it over when it's safe to rest it on the top, and we'll do the bottom. Again, the bottom I'm not really too worried about, but we definitely want it to be universally nice. So, here we go, I guess. Ready, and alright. Yep, I think it's in there. So now it says we shake it for 2 minutes. Alright, so it's been about 10 minutes. I've given it time to flash, and we're going to do another coat now. Okay. Hopefully you can see me clearly. There you have it. That's 2. And here it is, finished product with clear coat dry. I ended up doing 3 coats of clear coat. I feel pretty good about that. This is the top of it, and I think it came out looking fantastic. The surface is pretty smooth. Some of the low spots that we didn't quite get into are still kind of, you know, you can feel them a little bit, but they're definitely not visible. Now, I made the grand mistake of touching it a little bit too soon. I had to move it, and I thought I could get away with doing that. It was dry, it wasn't tacky, but it was still too soft because it was cold outside while it was drying. And I got like a little bit of a palm print here. You can't even see it unless you catch it in the right light. And I think I got a couple of fingerprints in a few spots. But otherwise, I think it looks phenomenal. Phenomenal. I'm pretty happy with how that turned out. I was a little bit concerned because I've never done this before, but for the most part, it's really a bunch of sanding. Same principles apply to kind of, you know, anything that you paint, anything that you sand. You sand it smooth to the surface that you're dealing with. In this particular case, 800 wet was actually a really good place to stop to give us a really smooth surface and allow that clear coat to adhere really nicely. It's unfortunate that I got the fingerprints in there. So if you join me on my next episode, we're going to sand that with a high grit sandpaper, wet sand, so we don't burn through any of the clear. Probably a 2000, maybe a 2500 grit, real fine wet sand, and then we'll buff it. I think that's what we're going to do to try to get those fingerprints out, because it's really important to me that it comes out good. And I want to see where I can take this now. So I'm having a good time with this. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you learned something. I know I did. Thanks for coming along with me. If you're not currently a subscriber, hey, I hope you consider subscribing. You like what you see. Thanks for joining me here at No Gears, No Glory. I'm Jeremy, signing off. See you next time. Bye-bye.